Little known fact, I like touhou. Would you believe it? Insane, I know. But that love of touhou isn't exclusive towards the official releases. I thoroughly enjoy fan-made music, art, and especially games. I call all the touhou fan games I've got on Steam the touhou projects. But Steam isn't the only place for fan games, especially the older ones. For that I tend to go to Moria Shrine. Shout out to Moria Shrine, I love piracy! While browsing the fan game section of Moria Shrine to legally pirate games at, I saw Sengoku Gensokyo. Before anyone starts moral grandstanding on my vocal piracy of this game, I do legitimately own it as well. Looks like a strategy game. Little known fact, I like strategy games. Naturally, I would want to see what Sengoku Gensokyo is all about. Thank you to my supporters. If you would like to support me in the channel, you can do so on Patreon, link on screen and in the description. If you do, you'll be thanked in the videos, be able to watch them a week early, as well as gain access to the recorded entirety of my playthrough for you to do whatever you want with. Sengoku Gensokyo sets the stage with a laid-back day on the Hakure Shrine. Reimu just sweeping away until Marisa shows up, wanted to hang out. That is till Yukari shows up to some sort of bullshit. She's manufacturing an incident, a war game, throughout Gensokyo. Anyone, human or yokai, is free to join and represent a territory. The winner of this war game, the territory to conquer all, will get their wish granted by Yukari. Yeah, I fucking doubt that, but kinda just looking to kill some time and have a bit of fun, Reimu and Marisa team up and join the war game. So now that we're actually in the game, how is Sengoku Gensokyo as a fan game? There's a couple different aspects to look at when it comes to determining the answer, and the first one I want to look at is the art. The portraits of all the characters are drawn by a handful of artists. This, to me, is reminiscent of the official books. The various manga serializations tend to be done by different artists, and even the non-manga such as Bohemian Archive and Japanese Red, or Perfect Memento and Strict Sense have multiple illustrators contributing art in those books. I feel that collaborative spirit of doujin artists getting together to make something is present in Sengoku Gensokyo. The contributing artists of the game have their own differing art styles and levels of detail, but that lack of style cohesion doesn't matter. Who gives a shit? What matters here is that the creatives and artists behind the projects, including Sengoku Gensokyo, are just doing what they like and expressing themselves. An ethos not only felt by official touhou works, but that whole ethos can be felt in the game by just the art itself. Outside of the art department, the writing is also pretty on point. At least it is for 2007, I'll elaborate on that in a bit. There's a side story for Marisa in this game that focuses on her as a magician as well as the other two magicians in the series, Alice and Patchouli. The story focuses on what being a magician for the three of them means, and also how they feel about each other as magicians. Now, of course, this is a lot of fan interpretation and adding in the writer's own interpretations of these characters, and that's fine. The way that the storyline is handled shows the writer's intimate knowledge of the world of touhou. For one thing, they understand the difference between the magicians, by birth, by choice, and all that. But this extends to the rest of the cast. I wouldn't say there's a whole lot of flanderization here. Take Komachi, for example. Does she slack off? Of course. It's been stated that she does the same in canon as well. But much like the canon, when it's time for Komachi to get shit done, she still does her job in the end. While not every character receives this level of depth and attention, the ones that do get it lovingly. And no, not every character gets that attention because there's a lot of fucking characters, and I'm sure maintaining this quality of writing would be very taxing and costly, ending up making the game several times larger, no doubt. This is a doujin product, keep in mind. Just fucking fans in the end. Passionate, sure, but not with the resources of an established company. Sengoku Gensokyo has all the characters in its campaign up to and including Perfect Memento and Strict Sense. That includes the printed works, the games up to 9, the album duo, and even PC 98 characters. That's a hell of a lot of characters. While everyone with a portrait does get a little bit of time in the spotlight, if everyone was given the same level of attention as, say, Marisa, his game would be a huge bitch. A pretty extreme undertaking, to say the least. Earlier I did say this is pretty on point, but for 2007 standards. Touhou was still in its early Windows era, and a lot of stuff we know now wasn't written back then. Take Medicine Melancholy, for example. A very popular fan interpretation for her is that she does not like Alice. At the time, there were no interactions between the two, and what we did know, that being Medicine's objective to liberate all dolls, would seemingly create conflict between her and Alice. and of course, a writer would take that and add to their own fanworks. Now we know this is likely not the case. In Chapter 9 of Silent Sinner and Blue, it was shown that the two were hanging out, and much later, during a Touhou channel stream, Zune suggests that they would actually be friends. I'm sure there's other examples of this throughout the game of some sort of discrepancy popping up in the story, but honestly I don't mind. If anything, it's kind of fun to notice them and to see how Touhou has developed since then. Now here's the thing, Sengoku Gensokyo isn't just a Touhou fan game. Whereas everything stylistically is borrowed from Touhou, Sengoku Gensokyo is as much a fan game for Sengoku Rance. Rance is an interesting series for sure. Okay, so Rance is a series of eroge, that being games with erotic elements in it. People fucking Rance. I think it's fair to describe Rance as the king of eroge. Here's some fun facts. Rance is the longest running eroge series. The first Rance game released in 1988. That's only 2 years after Dragon Quest, the series that Rance parodies in part. You could argue that it started in '86 with Little Princess. But the Rance game that I'm going to be focusing on here is the 7th game, Sengoku Rance. Whereas Sengoku Gensokyo used Touhou for its style, the game used the Rance for its gameplay. Everything from its structure, flow, combat, and resource management comes from Sengoku Rance. Hell, even the fucking title of the game is modeled after Sengoku Rance. But after playing through Sengoku Gensokyo, I was curious as to how much it borrows from Sengoku Rance. How much does Sengoku Gensokyo directly borrow, and how much does it change from Sengoku Rance? I've already gone over how much it borrows from Touhou, but it wasn't until I beat Sengoku Gensokyo when I became curious about Sengoku Rance. I hadn't played a single Rance game before this point, and I ended up playing through Sengoku Rance. A lot of it. Wait, did I seriously play this shit for 66 hours? The fuck? Right out the gate, Sengoku Gensokyo sure as shit didn't borrow the writing. Sengoku Rance is crass, it's vulgar, and it contains a lot of dark comedy. You need to understand that Rance is an asshole. I mean, Reimu and a bunch of other Touhou characters can be as well, but they're a different flavor of asshole. Rance is an abject piece of shit between indiscriminate murder, outright narcissism, and a lot of sexual assault. Rance doesn't do good deeds, and if he does, it's always for an ulterior motive or by accident. But the Rance series uses these qualities to subvert JRPG tropes and create a parody of the genre. Where most JRPG protagonists are good, morally upstanding people, here's Rance. Some dickhead looking to get his dick wet and nothing more, and will do fucked up shit to see that happens. Sengoku Gensokyo, in contrast, is not a parody. It treats Touhou and the story it is trying to tell with sincerity. Sengoku Rance is an eroge. Story progression? Sex. Ray's relationship with a character? Sex. Start your fucking turn? Sex. It is impossible to escape the fact that sex is part of the core identity of Rance as a franchise. Wanting to fuck Japanese women is literally the only reason why Rance is even in the country to begin with. Sex is entwined with a story. It is Rance's motivation, it is partially incentive and reward for playing the game. And Sengoku Gensokyo decided to keep it shit PG. That is one thing that I feel makes Sengoku Gensokyo an easier sell than its Rance counterpart. I've got no issue playing an eroge, but even then there were points where playing through Sengoku Rance that I felt the sex scenes were getting a bit much. That can be funny, but sometimes I just want to play the fucking game without, and then Rance manipulated another woman into sex. Since Sengoku Gensokyo doesn't have any eroge elements, I feel that would mean more people would be comfortable playing through it, but it also speeds up the pacing. When it comes to people being comfortable, not everyone would be or is okay with the content in Rance, and that's completely understandable. A lot of bad shit happens in those games, to put it extremely lightly. Feather fucking light. Even though it is written in a comedic and deliberately absurd and ridiculous way, some people might not think the actions being depicted are funny. So the nature of it being an eroge does repel a lot of people, and especially the type of sex it frequently depicts would repel a lot more. In regards to the pacing, when every turn you don't have to read about Rance busting out his hyper weapon and firing out his 5th load of Imperial Juice and wanting to fuck literally every woman he comes across, there's a lot less to read in Sengoku Gensokyo. You're able to, for most of the game, just go turn by turn with less interruptions and just play the fucking game. I tend to appreciate being able to play a fun game I enjoy. Wait, how many words into a script on a game and I'm just now getting to how it plays? Sengoku Gensokyo features a lot of gameplay differences from Sengoku Rance. Some I understand why and have no problem with. Some I wish experienced less of a change. Now you're on turn 1 in Sengoku Gensokyo. What options can you even do? There are a couple of things. The first and most important thing you can do is to go to war with a neighboring territory. The battle system in Sengoku Gensokyo, while inspired by it, is very different from Sengoku Rance. In Sengoku Rance, you could choose up to 6 commanders to send into battle. These commanders can be various classes, including the offensive samurai, the defensive ashigaru, archers, ninjas, onmyoji support, and so on. There's quite a few classes, and even then there's a couple of different ways to use those classes, resulting in a lot of strategy and decision making in the act of even deciding on your team. How many samurai should I bring? They need a tank to defend them, but do I need a tank to defend the back line? Does the enemy even have any ranged units to be worried about? Should I use my onmyoji defensively or offensively? Do I bring a Sohei? No. The answer is always no. The battles themselves can be simpler or as complex depending on what you're dealing with and what team composition you have. The objective is to get this bar at the top to extend past the halfway mark, and if you do, then you win. The way to do that is to fuck up the enemy unit. Push them down, spit on them, and call them a bitch. When damage is dealt, the bar might move. If a unit is annihilated, the bar will move a lot. If you deal physical damage, you take counterattack damage. If you deal range damage, 0 counterattack damage. If you kill the front line, the back line becomes the new front, and a unit's relative health is also reflective of their attack power. Larger max health, the stronger. But the lower their HP, the lower damage they will do. This is Sengoku Rance's combat in its most basic. It's also fun as shit. Sengoku Gensokyo carries over some of these concepts. It carries over physical attacks taking retaliation damage, the unit's health reflecting their strength, as well as the objective to push the bar to over 50%. But Sengoku Gensokyo drops other concepts. There are no classes. There is no front or back line. Whether you do melee or range damage now depends on your distance to the enemy. I'd argue this makes the combat a lot less strategic. There is no more deliberating over team composition and synergy. There really are only attackers and better attackers, and attackers sometimes with a support skill. But an attacker nonetheless. It's less about composition and more about bigger number. But while not as complicated, battles are a lot faster in Sengoku Gensokyo. A lot of that comes from less animations during battles, but it's also from the fact that it's far more offensively focused. A lot of battles in Sengoku Rance revolves around trying to kill the tanks or finding ways around them to target their weaker units. Since there are no classes in Sengoku Gensokyo, there are no tanks to draw aggro. Well, there's a couple of units that have a skill to do that, but that's an exception. So it's a lot easier to just target and curb stomp a single enemy unit without much distraction. That doesn't change the fact that the battles are still fun in Sengoku Gensokyo. Just because they aren't as complex doesn't change the fact that I still fuck with the core combat system heavy. I'm a sucker for big number, and there's still enough strategy to keep me engaged with it all. Sengoku Gensokyo's combat is still fun, but it just scratches a bit of a different itch than Sengoku Rance's. As far as what else you can do in a turn, in both games you can use your units to upgrade a territory to increase the amount of money you gain per turn. I would argue that in Sengoku Gensokyo this might as well be mandatory. In Sengoku Rance, you never actually need to do this. It's way more cost and time effective to just take over other territories than it is to develop your own. In addition to territory development, there's also relationship development. In Sengoku Rance, you could choose to spend an action to spend time with another character. When you do this, you'll end up getting one of several scenes with them. If they're a woman, probably fucking them. And if you rank up their relationship 7 times, you can upgrade them. And you can do this loop and upgrade them as many times as you feel like. I don't like how this was changed in Sengoku Gensokyo. You can still use an action to spend time with them, but it's never clear how many times you need to in order to rank up. It feels random how many times you need to spend time. Whereas in Sengoku Rance, it's very clearly number out of 7. Here you're told, get fucked. Even then, you can only rank up and upgrade the characters twice, and there aren't unique scenes when you do this. The only benefit is stat upgrades. There are only 2 scenes locked behind raising up your relationship with certain characters, but it's nothing like Sengoku Rance. In that game, each character gets several unique scenes. I understand that the doujin team that made this coolier is still a doujin team at the end, but I wouldn't even ask for that much. I would appreciate even just 1 scene per character. That would be preferable and would serve as a good incentive to interact with the system outside of increasing a stat by 1. Alright, piece of advice for Sengoku Gensokyo. Before doing that and upgrading stats, make sure you unequip their items. There's a stat cap of 9, and if an item is equipped, then that bonus is included in that. However, if a character's stats is naturally at a 9, then you can circumvent that cap by putting that item back on them and pushing their stats over 9 to 10 or even 11, which makes an already great unit fucking busted. That's about as much major changes that was made in Sengoku Gensokyo. But unfortunately, just as many options and mechanics in Sengoku Rance was removed. There's far less actions you can take per turn in Sengoku Gensokyo when compared to Sengoku Rance. To sum up, in Sengoku Gensokyo, you can attack a territory, develop your own territory, or develop a relationship. In Sengoku Rance, you can attack a territory, develop your own territory, develop a relationship, demand surrender, sabotage, search for items, tax for money, have sex, and even fucking dungeon crawl, which uses a slightly different combat system. There's a lot more options to choose from. Sengoku Gensokyo as a whole is heavily slimmed down from the game it borrows from, and I kinda get why. Sengoku Rance is fucking huge. It's a big bitch of a game. My first playthrough, I just casually went through the game, not looking anything about it up, and I ended up with the feeling that I missed a lot in the game. So I played through it a second time, this time following the guide made by Namar to optimize a playthrough, and there was a shit ton I missed. Hell, even this optimized playthrough, there's still a lot that I missed. It would require another playthrough or 2 to see everything on the main campaign. And then there's the fact that there's 5 other fucking campaigns I haven't even touched. Both the games do have replay value, Sengoku Rance having way more, but they both have something called National Mode. In this, you are able to choose from any territory to start with, and it's a sort of free play. No story, just pure strategy games. I don't know if this is from a later release or update to Sengoku Gensokyo, but only in National Mode can you use characters from Touhou's 10, 11, and 12. So if your favorite characters are from those games, get fucked, you have to beat the game to use them. But the National Mode is where I think Sengoku Gensokyo vastly improves from Sengoku Rance, and that's because it is far more customizable. Don't like a faction's team of units? Change that shit. Add more units, take away units, hell, you're even allowed to create your own units. Is your favorite characters not even in the game at all? Make them, fuck it, why not? Sengoku Rance doesn't have any of this customization, and I really appreciate the flexibility that Sengoku Gensokyo's National Mode offers. I know I've been comparing Sengoku Gensokyo a lot to Sengoku Rance and painting this picture that the game, gameplay-wise, is a stripped-down version of it. In some ways it is, and in some ways it isn't. But I also think that this could be a good thing. Sengoku Gensokyo is a lot shorter of a game and a much smaller time commitment. It took me about 17 hours to beat the game, whereas I'm 66 hours in the Sengoku Rance, and I feel like I need to do 3 more fucking playthroughs before I consider done. No shit, Sengoku Rance is more complex with more options because it needs to be to make that time commitment worth it. Not only that, but that's a far longer amount of time to learn that complexity and adjust to it. Sengoku Gensokyo, on the other hand, is a great introduction to this style of game. Its relative simplicity and straightforwardness makes it far more accessible of a game. And if you're interested in playing through Sengoku Rance, I'd honestly suggest playing through Sengoku Gensokyo first so that there's a level of familiarity there. But as a fan game, I'd say Sengoku Gensokyo is a fantastic one. It is genuinely fun and shows love for its 2 source materials. Shit, as far as I can tell, this was the first strategy game made by the Dojin Group Collier, and they made a pretty fucking good one. It's just a shame that there doesn't look to be any more activity from them. Last thing they did looks like to be some sort of Alice dating sim back in 2013. Nothing since. A shame. Would have liked to have seen a Sengoku Gensokyo 2 or something else like that. But as far as what we did get, Sengoku Gensokyo is solid.